This is VOA News. Via remote, I'm Marissa Melton. Top White House officials said Sunday they expect the U.S. unemployment rate could reach 25% before the world's biggest economy begins to improve. Currently, it's at 14.7%. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin told Fox News Sunday the reported numbers will probably get worse before they get better. He expects improvement by the second half of the year and into 2021. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett told CBS News' Face the Nation that he's expecting a jobless rate north of 20, in his words, with millions more laid-off workers filing for unemployment compensation in May and June. The 14.7% rate announced Friday is the worst in the United States since the Great Depression in the 1930s. The U.S. has already authorized pumping more than $3 trillion into the economy, with assistance for unemployed workers and closed businesses. Some Democratic legislative opponents of the Trump administration are pushing for further assistance. South Korea warned Sunday of the possibility of a second wave of COVID-19 infections, reporting new coronavirus infections at a one-month high. South Korea had begun easing some pandemic restrictions, including reopening bars and nightclubs. Many of the new cases, however, were linked to people who frequented nightclubs last weekend. In particular, one man visited 3 nightclubs before testing positive for the virus. South Korea has since shut down more than 2,000 bars and other establishments. Schools in South Korea were scheduled to begin reopening this week, but that may be delayed. Officials say investigation of the new cases will determine the next steps. China also reported 14 new cases Sunday, and that was the first double-digit rise in China in 10 days. From Washington, D.C., you're listening to VOA News. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says Britain is not ending its lockdown. However, it is modifying tough measures that had been imposed to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. In a televised address on Sunday, Johnson announced steps toward reopening the country. They include sending people who cannot work from home back to the workplace. He said people should avoid public transport and get to work by car, bicycle, or on foot if possible. He said the government has issued guidance to employers on how to make workplaces secure, including for public transport workers. Those measures will limit the capacity of public transport. Johnson also said as of Wednesday, people will be encouraged to go out and sit in the sun or exercise. They can drive out of town and even play group sports, but only with members of their own family. He said those who break the rules will be subject to fines. Johnson is the only world leader to have been hospitalized and treated for COVID-19. He spent several days last month in intensive care in a London hospital and has since been recovering at home. Weekend shelling in and around Tripoli has killed as many as 6 and wounded several dozen, according to reports. Turkey is threatening tough retaliation if Turkish interests or its diplomatic missions are attacked by forces loyal to Libyan General Khalifa Haftar. Haftar, who has set up a rival government in eastern Libya, has been fighting to topple the internationally recognized government of Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj. Turkey says the area near its embassy in Tripoli was shelled late last week. Haftar's forces deny any responsibility. Key U.S. health officials working at the White House are quarantining after being exposed in recent days to people who've contracted the coronavirus. Vice President Mike Pence announced Sunday evening he is self-isolating after an aide tested positive for coronavirus. Dr. Anthony Fauci, one of the government's most prominent voices explaining the scope of the pandemic to the American public, says he is adopting a modified quarantine after what he said was a low-risk contact with the White House staffer who tested positive. Fauci said he would stay at work and stay at home and telework, wearing a mask occasionally, and plans to be tested every day. The commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration and the head of the government's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are also quarantining after coming into contact with a person who tested positive. The officials are the latest at the White House to take coronavirus precautions. Valet to President Donald Trump has tested positive, as well as Vice President Pence's press secretary. Neither the president nor the vice president have tested positive for the virus. Via remote, I'm Marissa Melton. You're listening to VOA News.